4 canon episodes in, and I felt like it was time to change our name.
So are we planning on doing this every 4 episodes?
Maybe.
Did we just finish season 1? Is that what just happened?
It's possible. Yeah. This officially starts season 2, and ta-da, brand new name. No, this was an interesting thing for us because you and I did not agree on this decision, and that in itself was interesting.
Well, okay. So did not agree on the decision is a very black and white way to put it.
It wasn't contentious. It just, we had very different reactions to should we or shouldn't we change the name. By the way, our name was Save It for the Show. You know, we came about that name very organically during episode 0. We both really liked it. We knew it's a common phrase, so it's not like we expected there were no other podcasts that had that name. But between episode 0 and episode 1, you did a little research. There's I don't know how popular it is, but it's a long-standing podcast with a little bit of an audience. I don't know. I've never listened to it, but they've got almost 300 episodes. And they reached out to us on Twitter and were like, what's going on, man? What's the deal? And we just kind of ignored it the first couple weeks. And then when I posted on Twitter about episode 3, when it came out last Friday, I had a few people reach out to me, just kind of like same thing that happened to you, except it wasn't a person from the show that was reaching out to me, saying, like, didn't you know there's already a show with this name? And I gave them our reason of like, yeah, we knew that, but we're small potatoes, like, and it's a common phrase, all that stuff. But these 2 people, they were like, well, do whatever you think, but just from personal experience, I really think you should rename it. Like,
I don't think they said do whatever you think. I think they said change it.
They weren't being egregious about it.
No,
though. They were being very
egregious.
helpful, I thought. And so I took that in, and I was like, well, okay, like, yes, we don't have thousands of listeners. We're just doing this for fun. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? Let's make it something that's our own if we can, right? I mean, if we can find something that's just slightly different, but still unique and has the same spirit of what we came across in that episode, why wouldn't we do it? But nothing just really sounded as great.
So my argument pretty much was that save it for the show to me is becoming, and I think it has become a common phrase that podcasters use.
Oh yeah,
to talk about the act of saving things for the show. I mean,
stop talking about it on Twitter. Save it for the show.
Right. That's a thing. So my exhibit A was that follow up. Like, there's lots of shows called follow up. There's lots of shows called spoiler alert.
Yeah,
they're all all kind of similar type of things. There's also Upon Further Review was one that I found really early.
A lot. Yeah, a lot of those.
So my argument was kind of like, hey, like, these things will happen. We don't need to avoid being someone else's name. But if we could come up with a solid name, like, I was going to be all right with that. And I was fine because you felt like we should change it. And really what sold it for me, and I haven't told you this yet, what sold it for me was that I thought about sometime in the future when you'll be able to ask Siri to play you a podcast. And that if we kept the name the same, particularly of a show that has soon 300 plus episodes, then we're never going to be the Save It for the Show podcast that gets played when you ask Siri to play the podcast Save It for the Show.
I like it. That's if that's what it took to turn you, I'm fully on board with that. Which, by the way, Anchor, who we use for distribution, according to them, that you can say, "Hey Dingus," or play our name, and it should work. I haven't tried it yet. I thought about doing it on the HomePod.
You're talking the Echo device or
no?
HomePod,
Well, it says it says for the HomePod.
So I know that I think it will work on the Echo device. Because I believe that's how Relay FM has done Subnet.
Right.
I think Subnet is an Anchor show, and that's how they have it part of flash briefings that are part of the Echo.
Yeah, I haven't tested it, but supposedly that works now. By the way, we've been talking about this for 5 minutes. Haven't even said what the name of the show is. It's basically the same name. We just changed one word. So we changed show to mic. So it's now Save It for the Mic. You know, it doesn't roll off the tongue as well as Save It for the Show. But as an old time, as a former radio person, and I say that very lightly because I was never professionally in radio. I just did radio in college. I have an affinity for microphones, so I was really drawn to it when we kind of started to land on that as an idea, and then doing the cover art. I was like, yeah, I like this. I think it looks. I just thought it looked a lot better, but all of this though to me was really interesting because it was something that we didn't really agree on, and just like the nature of working through that and like trying to find a compromise, you know, it was interesting.
I felt like it was interesting too, because I very much gathered that you basically agreed with the folks on Twitter who made some valid points about why we should or probably would want to change the name. And I expressed that I disagreed with them.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it wasn't, neither of us, I don't think, was insistent. And I think it really just came down to, well, can we find a solid other name?
Yeah.
And then when I thought of the voice assistant playing our podcast someday or not, then that sealed the deal for me.
All right. New name. Save It for the Mic. I like it. Philip has.
I do like it. Now, my first comment of it was that I don't hate it.
As soon as you said that, I was like, ah,
you knew it.
The sunlight has broken across the horizon. I was excited. Yeah. When you said that, I was like, this is going to happen. Some follow up. I'll just go ahead and say this now. We're both on iOS 12 because we're crazy.
Not crazy this year.
I didn't think so because I kept hearing how stable it was, and it is. It's stable, but there have been some things about it that have bugged me, and we're just telling you now. Yes, we're on iOS 12 beta. I actually, the day the public beta came out, I got on the developers beta like 2 hours before that. So some might say the public beta appeared because of me. I don't know, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show and give some impressions. But I mean, it's fine. There's some things about it that severely.
We're going to give impressions later.
Oh yeah, okay. Save it for the mic, right? That's the word.
Save it for later in the show. Is that podcast already taken?
Probably, but Save It for the Mic was not. Our searches prove that out.
So last week, I talked about how I saw on Twitter that someone had determined that with iOS 12 beta 2, that with a non-pro iPad, you could run 4 apps, really 3 apps and a picture-in-picture video.
Yeah.
On basically iPads that have 2 gigabytes of memory and not 4 gigabytes.
I still can't get over this just from the example that they showed it on running on an iPad mini 4. iPad Pro 12.9 inch, I could totally understand why you would want to have 4 things going at the same time, but that's just utter madness. I think they were just trying to troll me specifically.
But to me, it's just about having the possibility of doing it. And to me, that is a lot of the difference and a lot of the contention between macOS and iOS and the users of those operating systems and the experience of using those operating systems is that on the Mac, you could have 24 windows on your display of all sorts of different sizes, overlapping, non-overlapping. You could just do whatever you want with 24, 50, 100 windows on your display, whether it's a 11.5-inch display, a MacBook Air, or whether it's a, beautiful 27-inch, 5K iMac. I mean, you can have as many windows and you are completely customizable. Now, as you're saying, that can just be madness. That can just be, not even necessary. But the fact that you can do it, to me, is in stark contrast to what you have in iOS, and particularly what you had in iOS before iOS 9, if I remember correctly.
When they first initiated
multitasking.
And then it gets a revamp in 11.
Correct. So back then, when it was just one app and that's it, and it doesn't matter now, they didn't have the 12.9 screen. Of course, those came together, and then, there's reasons that they did come together. But they had a 9.7 inch iPad screen that is perfectly good for two apps. So I don't think there's any argument for the fact that two split screen apps on a 9.7 can be great. But I mean, they were limiting you to one app, let alone if we go further back into history, you're looking at iOS, I'm going to say 4, but probably, plus or minus 1. I'm going to guess.
I think it was iOS 4 when the iPad came out, when the first gen iPad
It was. So iOS 3.2 is what the iPad, the original iPad had when it came out. And it was interesting because the iPhone 4 came out in June and had iOS 4. And I don't believe that they married the two operating systems. It may have been iPhone
and that's
OS
why I said it, because I knew that the 4 came out in the fall, and then the iPad came out.
4 came out in the summer, in June. Okay. So they announced it at So the 4 came out in June, because the 4 is interesting, and we can go down big rabbit holes because I love this stuff. The 4 came out in June, and it was
the last one
phone to come out in June.
In the summer, yeah.
Now the black 4 came out in June.
The white 4.
The white 4.
Infamous.
The black Verizon 4 came out in February. And then the white iPhone, I believe, came out at the beginning of April, if I remember correctly. Maybe end of April even. Which could have been 2 months before a 4S, but was not, because the 4S then started us on our current, the present and future of this reign of the iPhone coming out in September, maybe October, maybe November. Was it the beginning of November that the 10 came out, or was it the end of October?
Yeah.
Like
it was
November 3rd.
I'm pretty sure, it was the first week of November.
Okay. That's what I thought. So all that to be said is that back then, so what I was referring to back in those OSs was that you didn't have multitasking. So not only did you just have one app on screen, but whatever was on screen was the only thing running anything.
Yeah.
And we're even talking audio, other than music, I do believe, other than what they called iPod back then. I think that's what the music was called. It's definitely on the original iPhone. They may have switched it to music when they went to iPhone 3G and iPhone OS 2.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It gets fuzzy back then. But all that to be said, that, I mean, if you wanted I don't even know if there were podcast apps at that point, but if you wanted, I know when you played Pandora, for instance, which I used to do, when you played Pandora, you had to have it be the active app, and that was it. And if you needed to go respond to a text message, your music was going to pause until you got back to the Pandora app. So all that to be said, is that I love to see iOS push into more capability, even if it's arguably ridiculously so, just because the more capable it is, then the more shapes it can fit, and the more places it can be useful. All that to say that Federico Viticci reported on Connected, and rightfully so, I think, because when he made this point, then it really does makes sense why this hasn't been capable at this point, is that's a bug. And that when beta 3 comes out, that you should not expect to be able to run any more than 2 apps in picture-in-picture, which I think the limit.
Yeah, that's how it was before.
That you have right now on a 2 gigabyte iPad. And that's because you're just asking for it to break down. I mean, you're asking for an app to not just, because honestly, when you use a 2 gigabyte iPad and you go big app to big app to big app, then frequently you'll see that, this app's got to completely load itself.
Yeah.
It's not saved anymore.
It's just a RAM limitation.
It's just a RAM limitation because, when you're looking at whatever the system's going to be using, then you've probably got a gig and a half of RAM left. And if you've got picture-in-picture and 3 apps going, then, you're quickly going to run into a scenario where you're potentially going to have an app crash, and then what's it supposed to do then? And of course, Apple is just going to protect you from that and just not allow you to do that. And that is especially their want. on iOS. So standard, just 2 apps and picture for the 2 gigabyte iPad.
Sorry, everyone. We got your hopes up. All you iPad Mini 4 users getting excited about having 4 apps running on your 7-inch screen. We apologize.
iPad Mini 4 users are excited about nothing because there is no future for them.
Dang.
It is a
Truth.
It is a rough lifestyle. I share their pain with my iPhone SE. We hold bated breath for the fall.
You got a mouse in your pocket?
We will not. The community, the iPhone SE community. Me and John Moltz.
Gotcha.
We hold bated breath for the fall, but we won't get into that because we got a lot of other stuff to talk about.
Speaking of picture-in-picture, last week we talked about, I don't even know how this came up, but we were talking about the YouTube app and how...
so YouTube Premium is now a thing. And because it's a thing, then it got talked about on podcasts, and those podcasts explain that with YouTube Red, which is now getting kind of migrated into YouTube Premium, which also includes YouTube Music, that one of the things that YouTube Premium gave you, that YouTube Red gave you also, is background audio.
Yeah. And we were talking about how they still weren't doing picture-in-picture, and we discussed a little bit about why YouTube doesn't do picture-in-picture, because then they can't auto-roll into the next ad, which would then auto-roll into the next video in this vicious cycle. Well, news story coming out this week that they are releasing picture-in-picture, but only for Android users, but completely for free, which I think is pretty neat. But it seems like they're really using this as some kind of, I don't know how much of an advantage it is, but I mean, it's one thing that they could say, hey, no, we're not going to put that on Apple. This might actually keep, a certain group of people staying on Android. It just bugs me because I want it. I want it so badly, especially on my iPad.
Really?
Yes, really.
That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. I especially want it on, well, I take that back. I just want picture-in-picture, period, on the iPhone really badly. Because there's all sorts of times where I mostly want the audio from, honestly, it harkens back to the days that I was just speaking about, where if you're watching the game, if you're watching the Watch ESPN game on your phone and you want to go respond to a message or see post on Twitter or read an article while you're watching the game, particularly if it's like a baseball. Certain types of games, like you'd love to kind of read something while you watch the game, would make more sense than others. But soccer is that way, especially. I've been watching the World Cup.
Go Germany! Wait,
and
I don't really know what's going on.
So I've been watching the World Cup, and I would love to. Like, soccer is a kind of great one,
Yeah.
Golf would be very much this way. If you ever watch golf on your phone, like, you would love to do something while you're watching the.
But come on, man. What could you possibly do on your little 4-inch screen? Would you just want to keep the audio going, or do you actually want to see picture-in-picture in some way?
There's a little bit of both. You already get this
with like Facebook.
Inner app in Facebook and ESPN even. So ESPN, just with one of their newest updates, while you're watching something, they'll actually have, if you're holding it in portrait mode, then they have articles at the bottom that you can hit. And if you hit one, it just kind of shrinks your video down to the corner and gives you as much space to read. And it is plenty of space on a 4-inch phone even. Depending on what you're watching and how closely you're watching it. And if you want to,
says the iPad Mini 4 sympathizer.
If you want to see, pitch location, then no, you're not going to see that when it goes to the corner. But, if you just want to hear it, and
if you want to see them try to catch the foul ball, too soon.
Way too soon.
Sorry.
Way too soon.
I couldn't resist. Oh man. Now we're like, I just totally derailed Philip.
So is this, I didn't read this article yet, and now I'm reading it. I'm ashamed to say that I didn't read it yet. But this is on phones. Is that true? On Android phones?
As far as I understand.
That's awesome.
Isn't it? I long for it.
Now, has this been available to YouTube Red subscribers with Android phones?
I don't think so. I don't think picture-in-picture was available at all until this. That's my understanding. I just brought it back because we were talking about it last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I did today. I saw a really interesting article on Apple Insider about a way to trick Safari in High Sierra to play YouTube picture in picture. And I tried it and it worked, and I thought it was fabulous.
So is this the right click method?
Yeah.
So the right click method, I feel bad that I didn't tell you about.
Has it always been there?
I used that like 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks, Phil.
But
great friend.
So actually,
the right click method, that sounds like some awful like thing you would hear in health class or something. I don't know.
Most things in health class were awful.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's been a possibility. I mean, I used that at least 2 years ago.
I tried it out today. It looks great on my 27-inch iMac.
Oh my gosh,
I'm
I can't
gonna
imagine.
continuously do that now while I'm at work. I'll be paying
Absolutely.
attention to my work. Don't worry. Don't worry about that.
I'm not worried.
AirPower follow-up. What is this about?
So I was listening to Connected this week, and they were talking about what we talked about, what everybody's talked about, which is that where is AirPower and why in the world was this announced so far in advance? I mean, just incredible miss for Apple and, unforced error.
Right.
You know? I mean, like no reason you had to announce this early. And it just is so strange to see Apple, who very often to their detriment doesn't say anything earlier. I mean, for instance, with the recent keyboard, what do they call it? A service agreement. I can't remember what the term is for this new keyboard coverage.
It's like a program.
Service coverage, service program. So like it would kind of behooved them to say that before this week. I mean,
these keyboards have only been out since 2015,
right?
And it's 2018.
So I mean, usually they take their time. Now that's obviously a very different, a very different case. But at the same time, they announced AirPod in September that it was going to ship this year.
I think they just said October. I think they just said shipping in October.
No.
Because why was October in my head though?
October's in your head because the iPhone 8 came out in October. iPhone 10 came out in November. AirPower was announced as coming in.
Oh wait, I thought you were talking about AirPods. Sorry.
We'll get there. We'll step back.
Yeah.
We'll step back, and then we'll step back all the way to 2006.
Yeah, I don't even know if they said. Did they even say?
So they
like
said.
a date
So at one point they said early 2018, and then a lot of their copy, interestingly, switched to 2018. The early had mysteriously
give them a little bit more breathing room.
Mysteriously disappeared, but at the same time, everybody was like, "Well, 2018." They said early 2018, and obviously, if they announced it that September, surely it's coming in the spring. Surely it'll come out with something in the March, April timeframe, where they usually have kind of a soft release, like they had the iPad 6th generation, I think it is at this point, the iPad 2018, nice educational event they had with that. So they announced it so far in advance. A lot of the articles, Gurman's article especially, kind of put some context around that to where they announced the AirPods. No, I'm sorry. Before we get to the AirPods, they announced the HomePod that was going in June to ship in December. And then it eventually came in February,
yes,
if I remember right. And they announced the AirPods in September to ship in October.
That's what I was thinking of.
And they eventually came in December.
Yeah.
And so it's kind
Christmas, everyone.
December 22nd. So they kind of have thrice.
Yeah.
And one is still hanging out there.
Recent track record hasn't been great.
Thrice have over promised and under delivered, which is just mind blowing for a historical Apple viewer, because they are just incredible at doing the opposite. I mean, this is one thing that Gruber talks about often, is that one of just the hallmarks of Apple is that they under promise and over deliver. So I was thinking about this, and Stephen Hackett mentioned that they're just creating a check that's too big for them to cash. I feel like there's some better phrase in them I'm trying to get at there, but they are doing that, and they've done it 3 times. But the time that they did that to the most extreme was when they announced an iPhone in January of 2017 to ship in June of 2017 that had a number of apps that were screenshots when journalists launched them in their demos. I mean, they had no business saying that they were going to release a working iPhone in January of 2007.
Okay, yeah. You said 2017 earlier.
I did. So you can fill it in your mind. You knew what I meant.
Yeah, I was tracking with you.
Yes.
I was just waiting for you to, give yourself another chance.
Thank you, chat room. So January 2007, they say this is what we're going to release in June 2007. Now to do it, they pulled people off of Leopard. Speaking of pushing things, so Leopard was supposed to be released, I think, in June as well at WWDC, and they released Leopard instead in October. Interestingly, they said publicly that we said Leopard was going to come in June 2007. It's not going to, because, and I think this is in their press statement. This is not just rumor, because we are borrowing engineers from the macOS 10 team at that point to finish original iPhone on time so we can still launch it in June. All that to be said that sometimes it can pay. I mean, if you can bet big, you gamble.
Well, and they were very upfront about it then. They haven't been upfront about what's going on now.
Well, okay. They weren't as...
They put in a press release.
Okay, they put in a press release that they were going to take these engineers and put them on the iPhone team for a temporary amount of time to finish it. But it was not sensible to say in January that they were going to have the product that they had in June. I mean, they're like, if they would have, like, to me, the risk that they took in January of 2007 to say this is what we're going to give you in June 2007 was a way bigger risk. I mean, they were counting on things falling into place way more, I think, and this will come out in the wash, a year, 2, 3, 4 down the road, way more than certainly AirPods, certainly HomePod, and I would argue very much AirPower.
Right.
I mean, yes, I'm sure they were having heat issues that they're still having. And I mean, there's part of the story that they've just kind of scrapped the entire design and had to go with something completely different.
But AirPower is not going to change the world like the iPhone did.
And to me, like that is like the audacity of saying that we are going to give this to you in June, is that we didn't know it then, but this would eventually be the product of all products that have been released in the modern age, I would argue. I mean, especially when it comes to technology. If you want to narrow that to technology, it's an easy win.
Are you trying to say that AirPower can't do that?
It is just kind of 3 mats, not next to each other, but inside of one another. So yes, I'm gonna say it's a little less, just a little. But to me, that's interesting context to me, is that you can hate on Apple, and many will, and hate on them is the right word. You can question them plenty for missing by 2 months, for missing by 2 months, and then for missing by
almost a year,
X number of months to be determined, right? With this AirPower. But there is something special to be had if they, this is kind of different in this case, but I just feel like keeping that in mind, that there was this time, and there've been other times when they've promised and delivered.
Right. And I mean, look at the AirPods, that took longer, but the product we got was amazing.
Incredible.
HomePod, a little bit different story. I mean, you have people on both sides. Like, some people would say it just feature wise, it was kind of limited, but it was always going to be that. I don't think going longer would have changed that. And then you have people that think it's great for what it is. It's a music player, So AirPods is a better example of, it was worth the wait, although the wait wasn't near as long. And I mean, it's a charging mat, so it's not gonna dazzle us like AirPods did. So why did they do this to themselves? That's the question.
I don't know. I mean, they still expected people and hoped people would buy either the Mophie or the Belkin that they sold in stores as they sold you an iPhone 8 or an iPhone 10. So it wasn't that they wanted you to hold off on buying one. It wasn't that it was going to be the only way that you could wirelessly charge. It's a tough call for me. It doesn't make any sense. And it would be, it's such a miss too, because if they didn't, especially even when they did announce AirPower, but especially if they didn't announce AirPower, then the story would have been Qi charging and these mats, they're fine. No problem. But I bet you if Apple did one, it would be just like rock solid, And all people would really be asking for, because they wouldn't know. I don't know how many people would think of an AirPods case. Because that honestly seems kind of weird. That like you're gonna be wirelessly charging the AirPods for the back of the case.
Right.
So anyways, I don't think people would have thought about that. And I don't know that they would have thought about the Apple Watch, because it's not going to be able to lay flat. And to me, that could be part of the issue with AirPower, is that it'd be one thing if the Apple Watch was Qi charging already with like a Qi charging mat, but like it's got to be on that magnetic connector, and it's got to be on there the way it wants to be. If it's a little bit off, it doesn't charge.
Right.
So I don't really understand.
Do you think the watch is the problem?
I don't know that the watch is. I just
one of the problems.
Feel like, I don't know. It would be really interesting to know how far they were in September. Like, I hope that comes out at some point years down the road. It's just like, how far were you? Like, could you at least charge one of every one kind of these devices on the mat yet? Or like, were you still trying to figure out like, well, how do we charge the Apple Watch while it kind of hovers, but it being held up by its bands, and can we charge it if it's got a Milanese loop on it, which cannot be removed, or whatever it may be, so it's just crazy to me. But anyways, so if they hadn't announced AirPower, people would have been saying Qi charging mats, fine, but they got all these little shortcomings. If Apple did one, it'd be great. And then
they'd come out
when it actually was a thing, then Apple could present it to the world and say, you really thought that, and I mean, Schiller could just give a great little, we love Qi charging. Everybody's enjoyed the wireless charging. We just gave you an iPhone SE2 that has Qi charging. And we've enjoyed our partnerships with Mophie and Belkin.
iPad Mini 5. Let's just make all the dreams come true.
Thank you. The MacBook now charges with Qi, only takes 44 hours, to get to 50%. So just keep it there, But we thought we'd get in the game ourselves, But most of you don't have one device. Most of you've got 1, 2, 3 devices. He won't even mention that most people have 4 or 5, but because
or 8 in your case.
That's my family.
Oh, okay.
But a family charging mat, I wonder if that will ever be a thing with AirPower, but it probably won't be. They're already having heat issues. Probably not happening, but just have to put AirPower by AirPower by AirPower. But that being said, to announce that without having ruined it in this way would have been awesome. And they could have gotten away with whatever it's going to cost. Unconnected, they mentioned $199. What cost have you always thought that AirPower is going to be?
I saw it being similar to the AirPods, somewhere between $150 and $175.
That's very sensible. For some reason, it's always been $99 in my head, which makes no sense. Yeah. Now, let me just admit, when they said $1.99, $1.99, $199, I should say, then I said, that's a lot. I was thinking $99, but then I kind of said, well, like, no, it wouldn't have been $99.
No,
it would have been, you're right, probably like $169 or $199. All that to be said, now when they come out with that price point,
whatever it is going to be
exorbitant. It's just going to be like that on top of everything else. If they would have not announced it and then shown, we've got a mat Now you don't need 3 mats. Now you got 1 mat to take traveling with you. It's going to charge your Apple Watch. You don't have to take that extra thing, which is the hardest part to take, really. The hardest wire to take. Your AirPods, just lay them down, right? Which I think is a real perk for a lot of folks, especially if you go wireless charging, because it's kind of tough, because if you have AirPods and you have a wireless charging phone, you still you still need a wire on your nightstand. If you're an old person that charges on the nightstand, then you still need a wire at your nightstand. If you had an AirPower mat, then now you don't need a wire hanging around, which is awesome.
I don't ever charge my AirPods at home. I just charge them at work. Just have a lightning cable just laying there, and that's when I sit down, I'll put the AirPods in and then charge the case.
That's it. The AirPods are interesting when it comes to charging frequency, because like with the Apple Watch, some people will like hate on it, especially like Garmin users will hate on it for only having 1 day battery life, and like you got to charge this thing every night. But to me, it's just like, well, yeah, like I sleep every night, so I just
Congrats.
take it off and I charge it while I'm sleeping. Like, you know, I'm used to doing that with a phone.
How do you sleep track, Philip?
Well, you charge it while you shower.
You have 2 watches. That's how.
That's one way to do it. All that to be said, that to me, the AirPods are kind of the diciest device to charge, because sometimes they don't need to be charged for 3 or 4 days. And sometimes they need to be charged that night, or you're not going to get past 10 in the morning before it starts beeping at you. So I'm not in the habit of, especially because I only have 1 wire on my nightstand. I have 1 lightning cable on my nightstand.
You're a civilized young man.
So I usually just plug that into my phone. So I plug that into my phone overnight. And if I don't plug it in the AirPods like while we're watching TV before I'm going to bed, and switch the lightning cable over, and then if I forget to switch the lightning cable over, now my phone's not charged in the morning. So I make sure to get it plugged into my phone more than I make sure to get it plugged into my AirPods. All that to be said, just to lay down the AirPods would be great. But I don't know if it's worth $199. Right. That's steep. Like I feel like, you know what? If someone, and this is for better or worse, this is how I think about buying things sometimes. Sometimes I'm just like, I want it. I buy it. That was great. I like it. Who cares how much it costs?
You definitely do that. Yeah.
Like, sure. You do that.
We both do it.
You do that, Levi. Well, we'll talk about that at some point. But when it comes to $1.99 AirPower mat, my mind immediately goes to the fact that, like, would I have somebody pay me $200 to just make sure I plug in AirPods nightly? Like, yeah, I would do that. You know, I would not be like, no. I just want the AirPods to never have to be plugged in. Like if the choice was AirPods for $159,
you keep saying $1.99, or I just keep letting you do it.
AirPods with like infinity battery life, not really infinity, but just like lay them down and you're good for $359. As good as that sounds, I'm probably going, listen, like you're going to spend $200 just so you don't have to plug it in every couple of days.
It's a bit extreme.
Just come on.
Yeah.
Be reasonable, you know? And at the same time, as I lay out that scenario, infinity battery life seems very much worth $200.
Oh, man.
So I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself into it. AirPower. That hasn't been released yet. We don't actually know the price of it.
Speaking of AirPods, can I interest you in some new AirPods? We're both
yes, you can
frequent AirPod users, and so put a pin in that, because we're going to talk about this rumor about new AirPods. And I want to come back to, you know, like what would it take for you to get new AirPods? Because you know what are they lacking? So just keep that in mind as we're talking about these rumors around potential new AirPods. And it's just not just one set of new AirPods in these rumors. There's actually 2 set of AirPod rumors. The first, though, would release this year, refresh, new chip, hands-free Siri, which I don't know. I mean, you use Siri way more than I do, but does the hands-free Siri interest you?
It would if it worked really well.
It's kind of like the watch situation, right?
It's
the watch
very
rumors.
much like the watch. Because but it would almost like I use Siri for on the watch. I feel like, well, would I replace that with hands-free Siri on the AirPods?
Is a rumor that they would just always be listening, kind of like the phone does?
Yeah. So you could just use a white telephone.
Yeah.
And but just with the AirPods. Now, if I'm just gonna be able to look at my watch and start talking to Siri,
I might actually use it more though than if. But I get what you're saying. Like the watch is going to be able to do this too. So where is the need? Really?
The watch is going to be even better because you're not supposedly. And I haven't heard anybody talk about this, and I'm disappointed in that. But Tichi, if you're going to ruin your watch with watchOS 5, then the least you could do, is tell us if this feature actually works, because it's still just unbelievable to me that you can just look at it and just start saying things that you would say to Siri. I don't know. I mean, it is a pretty limited set of things that I say to Siri. I set timers with Siri. I create reminders with Siri. I add things to reminders lists.
We talked about this some last week around just the fact that I don't use Siri a whole lot other than with the HomePod. Like, in fact, I've even just turned it off. I've turned Hey Dingus off on my phone and on my iPad because I just don't use it that much. But we'll get to the iOS 12 impressions later. But now with these Siri shortcuts, I really am starting to open my eyes to the fact that maybe I would start using Siri a little more if I'm going to be engaging these shortcuts. And so things like this, hands-free Siri on new AirPods, or, being able in watchOS 5 to just raise and talk to your phone without having to, do any special button clicks or any of that.
Talk to your watch.
Yeah. Talk to your watch. Yeah. Sorry. That's starting to interest me, but it all has to do with what's in iOS 12.
It just depends on how solid it is, how reliable is what I'm looking for. Because my watch is really frustrating me, especially with Siri, because and I have no idea why this is, but when I use the crown to initiate Siri, it is really, really picky on how long I hold down the crown. And if I hold it down too long, then it like immediately doesn't listen to me. And it's very strange. And I feel like it's like a particular problem with my watch because I just can't believe that it's the way it's supposed to actually work. But anyways, and if you get the watch just like any distance away from the phone, it just refuses to do anything with Siri, which is really, really frustrating. I really hope that the cellular watch, because I have to think that the cellular watch, when on cellular, I believe it can use Siri. I mean, people obviously use Siri to play music while they're running. I think I've heard people talk about that. So it obviously can use Siri, because right now with a non-cellular watch, I don't really understand why this is the case, because Wi-Fi is a thing and has been since your iBook G3.
Back on this horse, aren't you?
Old Phil Schiller jumping onto a mattress. I don't understand why the Apple Watch can't give you Siri capabilities over Wi-Fi. And if it can, it's just reliable at that point, because Wi-Fi is reliable. That's the thing about Wi-Fi. Bluetooth is just so not freaking reliable. But Wi-Fi, unless you get to the edge, and Wi-Fi assist never ever works. We need to talk about Wi-Fi assist and the failure of Wi-Fi assist and the promise of Wi-Fi assist and the absolute and utter failure of Wi-Fi assist.
Add that to our potential topics note.
Yes.
Someday.
Yes. That'll be a closer someday. All that to be said, that I don't think, especially if I can just look at the watch and start, I really don't like the phrase, hey.
Yeah. It's become more apparent the more I use my Echo. It's a frustration, because my children will walk up to the HomePod and they'll just start saying, Siri, play blah, blah, blah. Siri, play blah. And it just stone cold dead eyes them, you know? And they're like, they get frustrated. I'm like, no, this isn't that one. With this one, you got to say the other word. And it's becoming a little more frustrating the more I start to get exposure to other voice assistants.
So what's crazy is, hey Google is the worst, really, because Google is this word that like it just gets caught in your mouth. Okay, Google is actually the worst. So okay, Google is the absolute worst, like call phrase or whatever we want to say. Hey Google, I think is like third worst if we're going top 4 here. And hey Siri, I think I have it turned on my iPad. That one is, I mean, it's second, but like Alexa.
Yep, still
there
heard
she
you.
goes.
Yeah. Yo,
Is
whisper quiet.
an incredible wake word because especially for children, if you just make an X sound, she will respond. And you know what? There's not a lot of, I know that Merlin Mann has said that election, during the election, when he would be listening to things that said election, that would trip off because it was so close to the X sound and it's so close to the Alexa wake word. When you, especially with, hey, telephone, not yet having any capability. Now with the watch, maybe it does. Not having any capability of doing anything without you either holding the button or saying the phrase. Not even in between, right? Because that's one of the nice things with the Echo and the Google Home is that they've got these new features that they've rolled out, and the HomePod hasn't yet rolled this out, of continuing to listen to you after you finish what you just asked it to do. So I think that could go
real-time follow-up, some might say. This side tangent brought to you by hands-free Siri rumors in the new AirPods. But okay, new chip means, you know, a little bit more powerful, probably some battery saving there that we would get. So longer battery, hands-free Siri. I don't know. I don't know if it's enough to pull me into getting new AirPods.
How rock solid are your AirPods?
Well, not super rock solid.
Because
the
that's
longer
me.
I have them, I can't even use them for calls anymore. Anytime I'm using them to talk to someone, they can't hear me at all. And I don't know what the deal is. I've disconnected them, reconnected them, I've cleaned them. If someone calls me and I have them in, I have to take them out to answer the call. And that's really frustrating.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And same thing with like Voxer or anything. If I'm sending some kind of audio, this does not work. Well, what's more frustrating is it works like 10% of the time, and then 90% of the time it doesn't work. And when it does work, it's still muffled and like just barely passable.
I mean, you should see how well Siri understands you from your AirPods. Like, I wonder if your mics are just kind of messed up in some way. Anyways, but so my biggest deal with the AirPods is that, and I mean, now I'm running betas, so who knows where this lands.
I do feel like they're connecting a lot faster in iOS 12.
People have said that, and so maybe that'll be a thing. I did, so the other day, I'll save that when we get to our topic.
Impressions.
But I will say that a new chip, to me, like the biggest advantage of a new chip would be if they acted the way they should 100% of the time. I mean, if you took one out and they stopped, which that acts really well for me, but sometimes every now and then, it'll take a while, especially like sometimes I think I just don't even give it the chance because it's been like 5-6 whole seconds. Like if you were going to start back up,
settings, Bluetooth. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're going to need some help because if this is going to take you 15 seconds, like I don't have 15 seconds to wait for you.
And it sounds like we're dogging on AirPods. By the way, we love them. But the longer we use them, I think the little things the little hiccups become just more frustrating.
All it takes is the few days a year when you forget them and you're back with wired headphones. And you remember that when you first got AirPods, you were really, really upset that you couldn't double tap to go 30 seconds forward. It is madness trying to double tap And it is so like you have to just really, really be careful not to triple tap and not to single tap and not to slowly double tap so that you just play or pause and then play again. Like I forgot. So
or accidentally engage Siri.
Or I mean, that was not a way to live. So that to me is what I would love the new chip to give us is just rock solid connection and just functionality.
And these new AirPods would supposedly come with a new case too that would be able to wirelessly charge.
Come with? Is that?
I would think, right? I mean, if you're buying new ones, surely that case would be able to wirelessly charge. They're
not for 159 or the rumored less than 159.
Okay, well, that's fine. Maybe they're a little bit more for that, but
yeah, it's going to be an add-on.
Oh, come on.
Absolutely.
Come on. If you're buying new ones, I understand you'll be able to buy a separate case to wirelessly charge. But if you're buying brand new ones.
If you buy brand new AirPod Pros.
Okay, so let's move on to the next topic here, because it wasn't just one set of AirPods that were in these rumors. Also, another set rumored for next year sometime. Let's just give them the moniker AirPod Pro because that's a thing, right? Noise cancellation, water resistance, and biometric sensors rumored to be in there. I mean, like, what can you really monitor through your ear? I mean, that's what I'm
monitor your heart rate.
Okay,
really well, I think. I think that what they mentioned I really enjoyed the episode of Connected this week, and one thing they mentioned on Connected was how slightly accurate, but not too accurate, the heart rate sensor on the Apple Watch can be, especially just depending on the person.
I don't trust my Series 0 heart rate monitor anymore.
You should.
I'll look at it and it'll be like 170. I'm like, well, I don't feel like I'm dying, but.
So one thing that can be done, and when people are working out, a lot of times they're listening to things. So AirPods are very often used when people are working out, very often used by us when we're not working out, especially.
Good
point. You could then have basically, I don't know, 3 heart rate sensors that almost
work together and get them
work together and average out and
triangulation.
Right. I mean, to a great degree, right?
Like the first maps.
Yes. Oh, what a life. So to me, that would be a great feature. I think that would be a selling feature for them. Now, it wouldn't matter to some people, but I think that would be a huge feature. I mean, that's a huge market, and people that work out spend money on stuff that they use to work out. So, I mean, you can, that to me is why Apple has found that Apple Watch is used for fitness, and they will just milk that till the cows come home.
As someone who has been looking into noise canceling headphones recently, I just can't imagine what kind of noise cancellation that these could provide.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
It's going to be some weird, processed audio thing, kind of like, well, this sounds bad, but it's going to be some weird computational audio situation like what they do with the HomePod, except I think the HomePod sounds amazing. I just can't see how this would work and not be jarring in some way. And also, like you've said, when you're wearing these, a lot of people wear these and work out with them. Like, noise cancellation is not the greatest idea when you're out jogging, or like you want to be able to hear a little bit if you're jogging outside. I mean,
I mean, don't all or at least most noise canceling headphones give you the ability to turn that off?
They do, yeah.
So I mean, I think these would be the same way, but no, that doesn't really.
These are gonna be pricey.
Yeah. How much are they gonna be?
I mean, at least $250, somewhere in there. Because maybe even a little higher. Because third rumor is that Apple is also working on studio over-ear headphones, which is interesting because they own Beats, who kind of has a big foot in that market. But these would even be higher end than the Beats headphones. So these would compete more with like Sennheiser and Bose on the high end of noise cancellation. So to me, I think if you've got your standard AirPods at $159, that was the price, right? the original price.
Yes.
$159, and then these studio headphones are going to be at least $350 because that's the going rate for Sony or Bose. I mean, that's just where they're at, right? So they're gonna, if they're Apple, they'll probably be even a little more because that's just kind of how Apple does things. So somewhere in between that 159 and 350 is where I would think these AirPod Pros would sit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that those have to be priced against each other though, because I don't think it just seems to be totally different use cases.
You said it though. You said these fitness nerds, they like to spend money on their little tech toys.
Right. So to me, you don't have to price them against each other because you're just finding it handy if someone buys AirPod Pros for fitness, for working out, and then some over-ear studio headphones for when they're sitting down somewhere.
Yeah. Maybe $229, kind of be in line with how their watch pricing is kind of weird sometimes.
For the AirPods Pro.
Yeah. Maybe it's always a weird number. Like, cause aren't the watches like $329 and $359 or something, between the size differences currently for the GPS models, non-cellular.
Yeah, I've kind of lost track.
They've got weird numbers that
point,
don't make sense anymore.
Well, so it's interesting to me that the AirPods right now. So it's interesting to me the AirPods are $159. That was a strange price when it was announced, and to me, it just continues to become stranger in my mind as the day goes by.
And it's the number one complaint I hear when people ask me about my AirPods is, man, they're just expensive.
So it's not that they're expensive.
That's
because they're worth every penny.
Well, yeah, no, I don't feel that way.
But why are they not $149?
That's what I'm saying. Apple's done weird things with prices lately.
Absolutely. So Gruber, I do believe, did say, speaking of AirPods being expensive, put that in quotation marks, he did come out with an article when they first came out that, listen, if you think these are expensive, you're crazy. Because what I've heard from solid sources
that they're not making as much money off of them.
Is that they did not Apple price these, right? I mean, and when you look at what is in them and how they behave compared to the rest of the market. I mean, just the case that they have to work with, not the casing of the actual AirPod, let alone the case, just the casing of the actual AirPod, the fact that they stay in sync, just the fact that they work as well as they do is incredible. And for this price is great. So basically, I mean, they're selling them at not their usual margins is what it comes down to. But I really do wonder if they will. I mean, there's been some talk about, well, especially if they come out with AirPod Pros, especially if they come out with some Pro AirPods, then maybe they'll bring the regular AirPods down in price. But what do you bring them down to? Because a $10 down to $149, like, why even?
Maybe
and $20 down to $139. $139 feels even stranger than $159.
I think you go all the way, man. You make them the number one stocking stuffer of all time at $99. I mean,
it's not going $99. I mean, maybe it goes $129, and you can either choose between a Magic Trackpad or AirPods.
There's no choice. I mean, the choice is obvious.
Both.
Last rumor with this whole audio roundup, new HomePod coming next year as well, which would be 2 years after it debuted. So kind of on that iPad model a little bit. You don't have a HomePod. I do have a HomePod. This has been not a contentious thing between us. It's just been you can't understand why I have a HomePod.
Puzzling?
I've tried to explain it. I don't know if I have done a great job.
Do you feel like it's worth $375 after tax?
Well, okay. I mean, is anything?
I'll take that as a no.
No, I mean, I gladly paid it, and I have no regrets about it.
Okay.
It's the same thing we were just talking about with well, not exactly the same as the AirPods, but other things where Apple, they price them at the Apple range, right? And so you're either okay with that or you're not, based on, what are you getting out of this Apple product? And so to me, the price was never, it's a steep price, right? Especially when you could get two Sonos Ones for the same price and get basically comparable sound out of
I just
them.
feel like if I was gonna get a HomePod, then I would do just that, and I would get two Sonos Ones, I guess.
But you're a Spotify user primarily.
Not right now, but probably soon again. I play the market and trials and all this sort of stuff.
You would say
I'm an Apple Music user.
You currently
mostly
listen around.
Yes, I've listened around, but Apple Music I've had for years now. Maybe since it was released, I've had an Apple Music subscription for most or all of the months that it's been a thing.
I prefer Apple Music over Spotify. I know you think this is crazy. And I didn't have any type of speaker in my house for playing music. And I'm also a big believer in Apple products. So it just seemed like a natural product for me to be interested in. I wanted something that I could have in the living room to play music primarily. And that's exactly what it is.
I got to give a quick Apple Music anecdote. And this is the microcosm of my feelings about Apple Music.
Okay.
So today I put on First by Lauren Daigle, who's a contemporary Christian artist. And so I put the song on, and I do this very, very often with Apple Music. I put the song on and then I go, I like this song. I just want to hear more like this. So I go create a station for that song. Okay. Every time, almost without fail, that I create a station from a contemporary Christian artist, even as outside of that spectrum as like Need to Breathe, Oceans plays when I create a station. That's the very first one. Oh. And I always, because I have heard the song enough and it was a great song when I enjoyed it, I always, in the very first 15 seconds of the song, skip to the next song.
Well, this is on you, Philip. All you have to do is say, don't play this song again.
So you can't, so I could dislike it.
But then you would feel
and
like you're being judgmental.
So I thought about that, and maybe, I can't remember if I did that finally today, if it was like the last straw. I was very, very close. And I think I just said, you know what, I will give it another chance. I will skip it. But you know what it played next? A Miranda Lambert song.
Oh, what?
So this is my problem with Apple Music, is the way that I listen to music is
it can't pin you down.
I'm kind of like a shuffle all, but a shuffle all, and I want to discover stuff. So I very, very often start a song. I'm like, a song gets in my head. I think of a song, so I'm going to put that song on, and then I create a station for it. And I'm all right with skipping every now and then, but just to miss that far outside of the strike zone and just had to have it happen repeatedly.
This is a big use case difference between us. You deeply care about discovery. I care not at all about discovering new music. I don't. Like, I have the things I like to listen to, and I have playlists, and that's primarily what we listen to is playlists, and shuffle through them. And I don't discover a lot of music, and I'm just okay with that, because I think a lot of, pop music aside, it's all terrible, and I don't really care about new pop music. But yeah, I'm just not as big into, I really like this song, I want to hear other stuff like this, and maybe I'll find my next favorite artist or band. That's just not a use case for me. But I get why that would be frustrating for you, and how Spotify probably a lot better at that.
All of them.
All of them, yeah.
So Google Play Music is really, really good. Very few people I think have ever used Google Play Music. I only used it because they had this like 4-month free trial around Christmas or around July 4th sometime. But Google Play Music, one of the great things they do is they're really, really creepy. And they will, when you're at work, they will give you like, here's some good playlists to listen to while you work. When you get home, it's like, here's some good playlists to unwind after you've been working all day. In the morning, there's like, here's some good wake up, not too rocking yet because, you're not completely awake yet. Still drinking your coffee, So to me, it's just like not that hard. It feels to be so much better.
Yeah.
And to just notice that like this guy, he doesn't dislike the song. No, but he skipped the song. So let's just stop feeding him that one, even though, it fits the general public, when they want to create that station for that song, but not for this guy. So just, I don't know, some more individualization. And what pains me is that, speaking of discoverability, in iTunes Radio,
whoa,
previous to Apple Music, when you used to be able to get iTunes Radio for free with iTunes Match, which I paid for, iTunes Radio had this gorgeous, wonderful slider. When you created a station, I think you created a genius station, I think they called them back then. When you created a station for a song, then you could slide it from like top 40 stuff like this song, or
deep cuts.
Like there was all the way so there were three settings. There was like on the far left was top 40, on the far right was like obscure stuff, and in the middle was like, a little bit of both and a mid-range. And it was really, really good. And then iTunes Radio was just not a thing anymore. I mean, it's very much, I think, how people very, very legitimately probably feel that got into Beats, because some of the features that it sounds like they had in Beats were really, really nice to have. And it sounds like the discoverability was like Beats, like MO.
Yeah.
Beats Music, not the Beats headphones, but Beats Music service. And so it really just pains me that they're just swinging and missing so hard. And because I have to have it, because I'm going to have Apple Music, because I play so much music by asking Siri to play it, particularly when I'm in the car, because I got CarPlay. So, I mean, it's just gold for that. And even when I'm at my cube, like I'll just talk to my phone. My coworkers just stopped looking at me at this point. So I'm going to have Apple Music and probably something else that will work on the Echo, really, because we have Echoes in the house. And yeah, I just really wish Apple Music was better.
The other appeal of a HomePod for me was, the reviews about the sound quality were up there. And so that was my primary use case for wanting one. I didn't really care about the things you could do with Siri on it, which not very many things anyway. But it sounds great. Although I don't know like what would even be in a new HomePod. I just don't know like what the next evolution is for that product.
Well, I think the evolution is a smaller version.
Smaller, cheaper.
I mean, especially with AirPlay 2 and the way that it works, and the way that the way that the HomePod analyzes the room. I just think it could go a really long way to, filling your home by having in smaller rooms, having a smaller HomePod, and in bigger rooms, having the regular sized HomePod. I don't know if they'll go there. I mean, it'd be interesting because the HomePod hasn't sold well.
We assume. We don't really. We don't really know.
All indications point to the HomePod not selling well.
I did my part.
You did your part. Yes, you did.
I didn't buy two, like some
or three, like with TG.
crazies.
Right. But I think a smaller version would be great, especially if Shortcuts takes off. Then to me, like the argument of they'll be able to make an argument that this is not, we're not making a sound quality argument for this one. We're making a Siri argument for this one. And that's a great argument to be made. Because right now, I don't know that the Siri argument is a great argument to be made. So they really, I mean, one could argue over the price, and one could argue over Apple prices for days and weeks and months and years. But at some point, if they really want to sell a lot of them, they're going to have a lower priced one, whether that's cutting the price of this one to $249, let's say, I mean, what if that is even, I don't know how much more you would sell at $249 than $349. I mean, you might have to go more extreme than that, and they're never going to go more extreme than that. So I feel like you would just have to have a smaller version that has less and is meant for kind of smaller rooms. Because for instance, like, you know, the Echoes in particular have a whole range of devices, even like an alarm clock device, you know. That if you're going to have a home pod in the bedroom, it's almost a waste to have a large standard only
I don't
one
know,
that they
man.
sell right now.
I took ours into our room the other day, and it sounded amazing. It sounded so good in there. I mean, obviously, it was at the same volume that I would have it in the living room, so I didn't have to turn it up. You know, like it seemed louder in a smaller room, which makes sense. But I was really impressed with how much it filled. And our bedroom, I mean, we've got a pretty high ceiling in there, but it's nothing like our living room is not huge, but it's pretty good, you know, good sized living room, but it's tall ceilings the whole way. And so it just doesn't, and we don't crank it up to get it really loud unless we're just having fun. But I don't know.
That's a good point. That it does sound incredible in a bedroom, I'm sure. It's just that I think if there, to me, like where Echo and Google and all those devices are making a whole lot of money now is that they've got all these different sizes so that you can put them all over the house in their different appropriate spots. And I could see people that get into the HomePod and maybe Siri shortcuts and his Apple Music maybe gets better, that people want
You
this.
just can't stop with that, can you?
People want the Apple speaker service all over the house, but that's not going to happen by them buying 2 or 3 or 4 $349 devices. That's not happening. There's probably one place in the house that it really, really makes a lot of sense for the large one, at least. You know, maybe there's 2 places, but there's all sorts of different places, 2 or 3 different places where a smaller one would still sound great, still would fill that smaller room, and would give you all the access to Siri that you want and all that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see where they take it. So I did want, while we're talking about the HomePod and we're talking about Siri and we're talking about how important Siri could be with Siri shortcuts and how much more useful Siri could be when you're talking to your watch, not having to actually, summon it. It's just going to always be listening. The other day in the car, I talked to my watch to send a message to my wife. And right after I sent this message to my wife.
Wait. Quick question. You were in the car, but you were talking to the watch. Why didn't you just use CarPlay?
I was in the van.
Oh, okay.
That's why my kids were in the back.
I got you now.
So I was driving the kids around. I needed to tell Blair something. So I just pulled my watch up, said,
Ahoy telephone.
Tell Blair this, that, and the other. And my 6-year-old in the back just all of a sudden goes, that was 3 sentences. I said, well, that's awesome. How did you know it was it really 3? I was like looking at my watch, like, is she right? Was it 3 sentences? And she was like, well, you said period 3 times. And it just hit me just how insane it is that we still have to tell everything. I mean, this is true of like if you use Gboard, which I use Gboard and use that for voice sometimes too. Like you still just have to tell it every comma and every period. And if you ever use any other punctuation, I mean, exclamation point and question mark, or it's not there. I mean, if you don't, you can say, when are you coming home? And that is just obviously a question that can never be a statement. If it's those words together, that's always a question. And yet no assistant, no dictation assistant can just put a question mark at the end for you.
Yeah.
I mean, Grammarly, you've seen ads for Grammarly, I'm sure, which just looks incredible. I mean, it looks awesome. To me, like, that's just elementary. It's like, yeah. There's rules. Like, this is just programming 101 to me, is that if I tell you, Siri, a compound sentence, like, you should be able to parse that out and throw that comma before the conjunction and not make me say it. And the problem is that I'm going to say it because I'm not sending a message without that comma before the conjunction.
Well,
that's a personal problem.
Yeah, exactly.
But the periods are not a personal problem because people that use no punctuation, it just becomes difficult. Like you just start like breaking up because, you know, your
Stream of
relationship got
consciousness, yeah.
ruined. Your relationship got ruined because you didn't understand the message right because there wasn't the parsing needed there. So that's crazy to me that that's still not a thing because it just seems like so suited to programming. It's just a set of rules that could be written with algorithms, and now you don't have to say it, and that'd be so awesome. I hope that comes soon.
I hope you get your wish someday. To me though, I'm just like, well, I can't even understand how complex you know, I don't even know how you would write it to understand and to just automatically know when you're done. And like, it just seems really complex to me. But then, you see what Google's doing with writing bots that can fool people and slightly fool people who don't. So on one hand, I'm like, wow, that seems really complicated. But then I look at some of the other things that are happening in the world of technology, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's not as complicated as I think it is. But like you said, nobody is really doing that.
Well, let alone going back to this for probably the fifth or sixth time this episode. If watchOS 5 can just tell when I'm looking at my watch, but talking to the people around me versus looking at my watch and talking to my watch, if it's going to be able to tell the difference between those two things, surely it can tell when. I guess one of the tough parts is that right now on the phone, particularly when you pause, it just stops and processes it. You know, when you talk to Siri, if you have any silence, and to me, it's kind of a frustrating amount of silence because a lot of times I'm like trying to think of my next word, and all of a sudden Siri is not listening to me anymore. It's interesting though on the watch though that it doesn't cut you off. Like when you dictate a message to the watch, it'll sit there and listen to you until you tap it to stop listening to you. So I feel like just a little pause, it could process that sentence you just said and either throw a question mark or a period at the end pretty easily.
And that brings up a whole separate issue of what's wrong with Siri in general is just the inconsistency between the different devices and how it can do certain things on one device, but not others. And I mean, you see that with the HomePod too, like how limited it is there. And I don't know. Why can't it be the same, experience across all these different devices? You almost have to be like, well, okay, I know I can't ask it this here. So it's too complicated. And I don't even know how that happened just now. I just engaged it on your phone. And for one, I'm not you. Our voices, I don't think sound all that similar. So who knows? This is a perfect example.
Quite a bit
of Siri.
Quite a bit.
Just
now
losing it.
The biggest argument against doing that is that it's not going to be perfect. So you're going to get some extra stuff thrown in there. Whereas how they have it now, it's like, well, if you tell us to put the punctuation in there, it's there.
Yeah.
And if you don't, it's not there. Like, what more do you want?
That's on you, man.
It's on you, right? And we're not going to mess it up. It can't be messed up by us because we're not trying to do anything with it. But the Siri team does not seem to sit around and go, well, that feature is not going to be perfect, so we can't do it.
Oh, man. Dang.
So I would say go for it. Make this as good as it can be, and it'll miss it every now and then. But then I can just tell you, how are you? I'm on my way home. I'll see you soon. And just speak to it, because to me, that is people talk about voice assistants and digital voice assistants and how, well, when will they really just be like having an actual assistant?
Yeah.
Right. Well, one thing they're going to have to do is, can you imagine talking to a real person and just saying your punctuation out loud? They would look at you like you're nuts.
Yeah. Unless you're like a reporter or something.
Exclamation point.
Old school reporter. Had to dictate over the phone, but that's a very specific example. Yeah.
Quite.
I mean, I think that's definitely a step we'll have to get to before it feels like, what's that movie? Her? I
haven't seen that movie.
I haven't either, but Scarlett Johansson on the phone.
Right. Yeah. So if Joaquin Phoenix was saying punctuation the whole time that he talked to her,
they wouldn't have fallen in love.
It's not a very good movie either. Like however good of a movie it was,
It's not winning any screenplay
it'd be
awards.
way worse. I can promise you that.
Speaking of operating systems on a phone, iOS 12. We both succumbed to our desires of being in the beta. You waited until it was public beta. I jumped on an hour before, I guess, when it was still technically the developer's beta. But I really felt like I wasn't going to do this. And I know I say that every year, and every year I just do it anyway.
Why did you feel like you weren't going to do it?
I just didn't want to mess with the hassle of even the little things, even if it's not like just a completely broken app, just all these little things that pop up that we're going to talk about. I just didn't want to deal with it. But there were certain things I wanted to have. And just the fact we're doing this show now, I just felt like, it makes sense for us to do it so we can be able to talk about it and be able to help other people not do it.
So what did you most want to have? My guess is Memoji was what you most wanted.
Not really. No, I really wanted. Well, it's like a catch-22. I didn't want it, but I did want it, and that was screen time, which is a very simple thing. And I mean, I don't even feel like it's really fully fledged yet, because it kind of works strangely right now. I don't know if it's just because it's only been a few days. Every time I go to it in the app, it takes a while to load the data. I don't know if it's doing that for you as well. It seems like it's struggling to keep up and report back to me. That was one of the main things. And then just getting to play around with Siri shortcuts, which the shortcuts app's not in there yet in this version of the beta. But you can still activate some shortcuts, and you're still getting shortcuts per se in Siri suggestions, down in the search menu, which have been actually remarkably helpful. A few of them. It's definitely paying attention to the things that I do on the phone, and it's serving up suggestions based on those. I use Find My Friends really only with Brittany, and so I'll use that a lot. Like last night, she went out to some girl's thing, and I'll always go and get her location and then set up just a notification when she's left, right? So I just know she's on her way home. So one of the suggestions when I pull down the search menu the last few times has been find Brittany. So like it knows, and some of them have been text this person, so it's definitely learning what I'm doing on the phone and serving up relevant suggestions. But man, I'm ready for that shortcuts app to get in there so I can really, really deep dive with it. But yeah, the main thing I wanted to play around with was screen time, and boy, oh boy, is it a little depressing. My major problems with it so far have been around messages. I've had a lot of issues in messages, one of which I've submitted, the others I haven't yet. The biggest thing I noticed right from the start was that text message forwarding is not working between my other devices. So, my Macs and iPad, and I'm not able to send SMS from those other devices either, which I mean is part of text message forwarding. So, I don't know what's going on there. I filed that. I've turned that on and off. I've turned that setting on and off and signed out and all that stuff. And even so another thing I've noticed is that when I'm sending iMessages, it's sending them from my iCloud account and not my number.
There's definitely some strangeness going on there.
That's been the biggest thing that I've noticed is just those issues with messaging. And I'm sure, as new updates come out, I'm sure that stuff will get resolved. I'm not to a point yet where I'm like going to go and downgrade back to 11.4. I don't really want to go through that hassle, although I definitely did make my backup and did all of that to, be ready to do that. I've noticed a few different kind of glitches on notifications on the lock screen, not showing up correctly. Just kind of like being in weird spots and kind of overlapping on top of each other. I mean, that's been kind of minimal. Other than that, I mean, other messages is annoying. Like, if I'm being honest, that is frustrating because I feel like I'm missing things. In general, I feel like I'm missing some notifications. I'm not getting my Slack notifications as frequently as I normally would. So there's definitely some things that are not perfect, but overall, in terms of just battery life, I've noticed no difference in battery life at all. My phone got hot during installation. Haven't had any weird, peaks and valleys. Other than that, it feels. I mean, I think you summed it up best in our Slack. It feels a lot like iOS 11, and that's not a bad thing. I haven't noticed any speed improvements. I know that that's something they've been really pumping with this release is performance, particularly for older phones. I have a 10. It's not old, but you would. They seem to sell it like you're going to even notice improvements on newer devices too. It'll just be more, noticeable on older devices. I haven't really noticed anything in that department.
You haven't felt like animations have been quicker?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't. I don't get the sense that anything's moving particularly faster. But that's probably just something I wouldn't pay attention to.
Probably so.
Anyway.
I'll probably do a wipe, a full restore to get on the developer beta, because I will, whenever watchOS is really reliable at all, I'll hop to it, because I really want to try this automatic Siri. And I love, speaking of likes of iOS 12, I love the group notifications. I didn't even know how much I would love it, but I do. It was almost, it's a little bit like the notification settings and the notification settings within the notification that there are now that I haven't used yet, but I will, because I actually have been better and just got better pretty soon before WWDC, totally wastefully, at when something sent me an extraneous notification, I would go into settings, into notifications, find that app, and then I would have to stare at the settings for a while to figure out, what am I supposed to do? What did these settings mean? Because this is iOS 11 were very, very capable notification settings, but very, very cryptic. Very hard to see, like, what does this switch do? I understand, like, temporary and persistent. That makes sense. Banners and that sort of thing. But okay, lock screen versus notification center. But they've made it really, really graphical in iOS 12. The notification settings are really graphical in iOS 12, which I really like. You've got a choice between allowing notifications or not, period. I mean, that's always been there. But now they have a graphic that shows, do you want to see this on the lock screen? Do you want to see this in notification center? Do you want to see this as a banner? Or all three, or any combination of those? And I think that's a great way to think about it, because I'm sure there's a combination of iOS 11 settings to where you would not see the banner, but it would come on the lock screen. But I could never tell you what that,
how to get to
was.
that point.
Just like that graphical piece, I think helps a lot. And I mean, even more for what I call lay people, and I call you that, lay
Pretentious.
people. No, not pretentiously. Affectionately, really. So I'm loving that really enhancement of controlling the notifications that way. And I really love the grouped notifications. I didn't really realize how much it would bother me when there would be notification after notification after notification after notification, and I would just have to scroll all through them. And then if there were other notifications from other places, then those would get mixed in between.
Right.
And it would make me feel just kind of overwhelmed really quickly.
You'd miss stuff. Yeah.
And you would miss stuff too, for sure. So I really, really, really love that.
I did use the Measure app for the first time today.
Okay.
Was walking around the office, and we wanted to make some signs to match in a specific area. And so there was already a sign in that area, and someone was like, well, we just need to know how, what the dimensions are. And I was like, well, let me show you.
So you felt confident enough in it?
I did. Yeah. I just pulled it right up. Hadn't used it before at all. And it was super simple. You'd hover over a corner, tap to set the corner, and then you just move the phone up and until your next point and tap that, and it just instantly, as you're moving, it starts measuring and giving you a number. And seemed accurate to me. I mean, like I didn't get out a ruler and test it. It seemed like a accurate measurement to me, and I was pretty impressed with it. I mean, it worked really well. It's a simple app, and I don't know how many times I'll ever really need to use it, but the case presented itself today, and it worked like a charm.
That's good.
Yeah.
I used lyric searching in Apple Music today.
Oh,
and it was really great. And really I wasn't even trying a lyric search, which is interesting. One of the things that Apple Music is terrible about, another thing, is approximate search. It's like, well, in iOS 11 and all previous versions, if you search for something that you would think was the song title, but isn't the song title, because the song title is some like very obscure line in the song. Some songs are like this, where the chorus is this same phrase over and over again, but that's not the title of the song. If you, my experience is that if you search for that phrase in Spotify and all these other, all these other services, then it'll find that song because it knows when people are searching for that, they want this song. Apple Music seems like very, very literal and wants you to be like, well, if you wanted that song, why didn't you search for the song title? I don't understand. But so this really just kind of totally avoids that problem by now it's still going to be literal, but it's literally searching all the lyrics of the song. So no problem if that wasn't.
And that's just through the normal search.
Yes. So just you do a normal search.
I didn't even know this was a feature.
It's really great. So I'm glad to have that. And it avoids the problem that the workflow really that I often find myself in, which is that I hear lyrics to a song. I'm like, oh, this is a good song. Sometimes I'll try to Shazam it and it's just not loud enough, or it's not clear enough, or Shazam just doesn't pick it up. But I heard lyrics, or a lot of times, like I'll hear a song on a commercial, and you can hear, some line in the song, and if you search for, so I'll go search for that line in Google and then determine what the song is, and now I can go to Apple Music and actually search for that song or ask Siri to play the song. But now I do wonder if Siri can search for songs with lyrics. I don't know. I'm guessing not, but I did today find out, and I thought I had tried this in iOS 11. I'm almost positive I tried this in iOS 11, but maybe I didn't. Is that when I was in the car listening to a song with CarPlay, hit my CarPlay Siri button, and when I was using iOS 11 and asked it to share this song, and it was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Sharing a song. What would that even entail? But then I tried. So I was listening to a song today, and I was like, oh, I really want to send this. I think it's to my sister. When I was driving, but I was using iOS 12. I was like, well, I'm just gonna try it. See if it works. So I try it, and it was like, who do you want me to send the song to? I was like, this is great. It's a Siri improvement. That's just like totally under the surface, and when you try it, it works. So it almost disappointed me though when I unplugged my personal phone, plugged in my work phone, and tried it, and it worked on iOS 11. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I tried that. But I will say that we know that Siri is a server service as much as it is a local service, and that they make improvements to Siri in the back end. So, I mean, it could be that. I mean, it was some number of months ago, 2, 3, 4 months ago that I tried this with iOS 11. So there's the chance that it got a back end upgrade. But I don't know. I'm not sure about it.
Are you saying Siri is capable of changing its core drives like a host? That was a hard transition, hard left turn. Where are you in Westworld? I gotta know. Personally, I want to have some kind of Westworld centric episode at some point, but it's still fresh, right? And you haven't finished.
And I'm in the middle of episode 8,
which is
season 2.
A great episode.
It is,
by the way. Yeah. So, man, you're holding me back here. I need you to, over this next 6 days, to. I don't know though. I don't know if we should wait even longer than that, because what would that look like if we were going to talk about an entire season of a TV show?
I I think so. The question becomes, particularly for a show like Westworld, would it be better for us to do a season 2, really season 1, season 2, since, I mean, just a Westworld first 2 seasons episode after we've watched season 2 through once? Or would it behoove us
I need to watch
to
it
watch
again.
season 2 through again and then
I'm gonna have to do that
haul in?
probably. But I'm afraid if we do that,
don't quite know what I'm getting myself into, but I'm guessing that I'm gonna. I mean, because at this point, I am, and I don't really remember, like, for season 1. Not to just totally spoil what we're potentially talking about doing. For season 1, I felt like I was lost on like 2 out of the 10 things they were trying to do, but I was pretty connected with like 8 out of the 10 things that they had going on throughout the season. You know, and it started off with like 2 things, and then all of a sudden there was 10 things going on. But I was like, well, I understand 8 of these. Those 2, hope they answered that. And you know, they did a lot of answering. I'll give them that much. But this season, there are 25 things going on, and I feel like I've got my hands around like 6 or 7 of them, and
and then
depending on the episode, it's like, oh, I thought no. Now it's like 5 things that out of 25. That
the other challenge with this season is, you know, they obviously wanted to have this multiple timelines thing again, like they had in season 1. It's way different.
Don't you spoil a thing, sir.
Well, all that to say,
that is not a spoiler yet, but
all that I bring that up because that's what's made this season more complicated, is because sometimes you don't even know at what point these things are happening, and they keep switching so quickly that it's hard to keep up.
So that's an interesting point, because I think we did talk about this in our inaugural episode 0. Was that I never, like, season 1, I did not catch on to those 2 different timelines and these very similar characters until they basically revealed it. I didn't catch on to any of that, and I enjoyed that just fine. I didn't feel like I should have. I mean, I thought it was. I just enjoying these 2 stories, and all of a sudden they were not quite 2 stories, and that was interesting. I was totally fine with that, but I really felt like they really, like, the way that they wrapped it up really things fell into place really solidly. I mean, it was like a great Tetris board that they built for themselves. This time, I feel like this Tetris board is insane, and like repeatedly, I just have pieces falling, and there is no place to put that, and there would never be a place to put that piece. So
yeah, it's challenging to say the least. In the finale, it instantly made me want to watch the season again, because, you know, once things kind of fall into place, like you say, you're just you instantly want to go back and rewatch to try and pinpoint when certain things happened. And I feel like I'll have a whole different read on the season if I watch it again. Now, some people might say that's crazy. Like, why would you have to watch a show again before you fully feel like you grasped what happened? I mean,
if it's Friends,
right,
you wouldn't.
But
right?
Exactly. That's kind of what Westworld is, right? It's a very layered and complex show, to say the least. So yeah, but I don't want to wait too long to talk about it with you, because then I'm afraid we'll never really get there. So
I agree. I mean, listen, I'm gonna be at the end.
You got 2.5 episodes to watch between now and
even
Thursday.
Half, 2.25 episodes.
The finale is a good 90 minutes. So
wonderful. Glad to hear that.
And don't miss the post-credit scene.
I've been watching all of those. I guess you're saying there's like a post-credit show scene.
Yes.
Okay.
To the finale.
Yeah. So, have you been watching the like Inside Westworld, like How We Created Westworld
I haven't.
features.
No,
They are
I've seen them on the
really-
app, on the HBO Go app.
really
but
good. And they sometimes they reveal a little bit. Like they'll talk
Oh.
about like Lisa Joy or Jonathan Nolan will sometimes talk about like what they were trying to accomplish with that or why they did it that way. Not just from like a visual standpoint, but sometimes like we did it this way visually because this is how these characters interact with one another, and because we knew that this was going to happen later, so that's why we did it. This way earlier. It's kind of a foreshadowing that you didn't know about. But
Yeah. Well, that's your assignment, Philip, is to knock those episodes out before Thursday,
I accept that assignment.
because I got no one to talk to about this. No one. And I need to decompress.